My name is Danny Ross. This is my wife, Elizabeth. So I am the president of United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 152. We represent roughly around 13,000 folks in the public and private sector.
Today, we're going to get to know Danny and Elizabeth. 13 years ago or so, Danny and Elizabeth had the first of two daughters, but they went through a lot to get there. We'll get into it, but they were diagnosed with PCOS, endometriosis, and male factor infertility. They did several rounds of fertility treatment, and along the way, they had some uncomfortable conversations with loved ones.
You know, people couldn't understand. It's like, well, it's easy for you guys to say, and you have a family, you have, this, what you want. Like we wanted to just have a family.
We talk a lot about how physically, emotionally, and financially draining infertility is. And Danny and Elizabeth experienced all of it.
We were, financially strapped. We were emotionally strapped, both of us. I would find out every month. I'm trying not to cry.
Yeah, it's totally going to happen.
It's going to totally happen.
Totally going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen. But don't worry. Today's story is not only about the difficulties that Danny and Elizabeth faced along the way. We're also going to learn about how Danny is bringing hope and relief to the roughly 13,000 food and commercial workers of Local 152. I'm Dan Bulger with Progyny, and this is Infertility. Hello and welcome. I have to say right at the top here today that I really enjoyed spending some time with Danny and Elizabeth Ross, and I'm really excited to share their story with you here today. So let's dive right in. They were 26 years old when they got married, and like many do, they decided to take a year together before trying to have a baby.
We tried for a year. We knew going into it that I was told back, when I was a teenager, I had endometriosis, and back then was told, that I might have some issues with infertility, which of course, when you're 15 years old, you're not even listening. You don't care. You're not thinking about having a family or what that entails even.
Endometriosis is a condition where similar tissue to the uterine lining grows outside the uterus. It's actually very hard to diagnose, so it's pretty impressive that Elizabeth had a diagnosis when she was 15. But that early diagnosis didn't change the fact that 30 to 50% of individuals with endometriosis experience infertility. And this can be due to things like pelvic inflammation, scar tissue formation, fallopian tube blockage, and altered hormonal and immune system function as well. So after a year of trying, they were told that IVF would certainly be their best bet. Only
we had no coverage at all, nothing, zero.
They did have health coverage, good healthcare coverage actually, but it just didn't include anything for infertility. Now, this was 15 years or so ago, so it would have been very rare for them to have had coverage at that time. But even today, many are facing fertility treatment with limited resources or support. And when facing fertility treatment with no or low coverage, you're kind of put in a bind. Sometimes the treatment you need simply is out of reach. So you settle.
They did say kind of our situation, because once they do the full workup of us and everything, I not only had endometriosis, I also have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And Danny also has male factor infertility, because why wouldn't we just, have me? And obviously they said, our best case scenario would be doing IVF. Well, there's a price tag on all of that. And again, out of pocket.
So their path was IUI, intrauterine insemination, where sperm is placed directly into the uterus around the time of ovulation. And don't get it wrong, IUI is a great option for many. It does increase the chances of fertilization, and for some, that's all they need. It's definitely true that every person doesn't need to rush right to IVF. But when facing PCOS, endometriosis, and male factor infertility, IVF is just a considerably better option than IUI in most cases. And most fertility doctors would certainly recommend moving to IVF, if not right away, then after just a couple rounds of IUI. But again, without coverage, IUI was simply the option that Danny and Elizabeth could afford at the time.
It made sense. I mean, look, so we
could kind of afford it.
We're at a different spot in life. And, look, from my perspective, when we went down to start trying to have a family, like my wife, all she ever wanted to do was be a mom, right? You know what I mean? So like, when we started dating, and like, she kind of gave you the cliff notes, but we started dating, we fell in love really quick. I mean, like I found somebody that I clicked with, and I'm very quirky as a person. So I don't click with everybody so easy. And I also don't trust people very easily. But, I met my wife. We fell in love. We decided we were going to have a family together. And look, all she ever wanted to do was be a mom. Look, I have a different perspective on it now as a 47, almost 48-year-old man. I have a different perspective than I did in my 20s. You get hit with this idea that, we can't, have a family on our own naturally. And there's all these kind of price tags attached to it. And when you're in your 20s and, I imagine even as you get older, but you have all these financial insecurities going on, you can barely, at that point in our life, we could barely afford to pay our bills as it was, all of us working. And, I think 2 or 3 different times we pulled money out in order to try to have a family.
Well, we went through our savings
We went
first.
through our savings, ripped through that. Any income tax savings we had, we ripped
Everything was
through
gone.
that. And we got to the point where, as the longer you go on, you become more and more, I guess, desperate to have a family, and you don't know what else to do.
They did a lot of IUI cycles.
We did 13 IUIs.
And at the time, I mean, our rationalization for it was a small obtainable goal that we could save a little bit of money in order to try to do it. Right?
And we could kind of piece that out,
we could figure out how to do it.
And it was a lot more chances, even though the odds were less.
That rationalization is one that people make all the time. And on its surface, it makes a lot of sense. If IUI costs $1,000 a round and IVF costs $20,000 a round, well, you can do a lot of IUIs before you hit a number like $20,000, and you don't have to pay it all at once. But that rationalization starts to fall apart when IUI isn't the right recommendation. Then all the money you're putting into IUI is just going to be added on top at the end.
There was times where we're like, what are we doing? Especially you, and I'm not saying it in a negative way, but you're like, we're just throwing money away. Like we don't, because there's no guarantee either when you go in, and it's like, what are we doing? We're throwing away more money that we don't have.
I want to be clear here and say that none of this is to put into question Danny and Elizabeth's judgment 15 years ago. The truth is that these are decisions that people are forced to face all the time when they don't have adequate coverage for fertility treatment. And that's going to come into play when we start talking about Danny's ultimate choice to bring a considerably better solution to the people he represents in the local 152. 13 IUI cycles is a lot. And Elizabeth also shared that one of those cycles was especially painful when she had an ectopic pregnancy. You simply can't overstate the trauma that long experiences with infertility can create.
It was like, you would do this build up. Plus I was taking wicked amounts of, fertility drugs. And then, you have this hope every cycle, every month. And then, it wouldn't work. And, he wants to fix me and make me feel better. And the only thing that's going to make me feel better is finding out I'm pregnant, finally.
The stigma, I guess you would say, of infertility, everybody thinks it's the woman's fault. It's a woman's problem. And that's not it at all, right? It's a shared thing, and it's not even a problem. It's a condition. It's a medical condition, and thank God that they have workarounds for that. And thank God medicine is where it is today, and we have these options to help people have families.
Yeah.
I mentioned the ectopic pregnancy. That's when an egg fertilizes and then the embryo does implant, but it implants somewhere it's not supposed to be. In this case, it was in a fallopian tube. This can be a dangerous and life-threatening thing if not treated, and unfortunately, the only treatment is to remove the fallopian tube. This is not only tragic, but it also means that their chances of success with an IUI were just cut in half. 13 IUIs, and now with even further reduced chances of success, meant that they felt like they really couldn't keep taking that approach. And so they moved to IVF.
It was our third one that we got pregnant with, Julia, our oldest, our 13-year-old. And then Skylar, our 10-year-old, she is from the same cycle. They were made at the same time.
When we went and we saw the heartbeat for the first time, and you seen the little blink in the heartbeat, that's kind of amazing. Look, I look back at like this idea of like this infertility treatments. Thank God this is available for people, because people look, I generally think we're pretty good parents. I don't know how great we are as parents, but God damn it, we work hard. And people like us, in our situation, we don't have children. without infertility. And like becoming a father is like the absolute most rewarding thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
And I can speak for her. I mean, she, is somebody who I know, we've been together, like she's my best friend and we've been together forever.
25 years.
Yeah. All she ever wanted to do was be a mom. I've seen the best parts of my wife and her being a mom.
I've seen a whole different side of him as a dad. I knew he was going to be a good dad, but he's even better than I thought he was going to be. I just think everybody should be given that opportunity if they want it. I don't, that's all. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, and I imagine you'd agree. Everyone should have the opportunity to become a parent if that's something that's important to them. I don't think it requires a person to go through what Danny and Elizabeth went through to see that people need support, and that giving that support is one of the best things you can do for those who need it. But knowing Danny's background, it's no surprise that when he saw the opportunity to change the story for others, he took it with both hands.
Look, it was important to me personally, and kind of backstory. So I worked with Local 152 for the last 25, almost 26 years. I worked my way through the ranks from an organizer to a business agent to bargaining director, executive assistant to the president, and kind of worked all the way. And just about a year ago, last year, I was elected president. And one of the something that look, my job representing our members, I take really serious. And one of those things that comes along with that was becoming chairperson of our Health and Welfare Fund. And so my job as a chairman of our Health and Welfare Fund is to oversee benefits, make sure we have the appropriate amount of benefits to come in there for our members, contributions coming in from our contributing employers, and also put ourselves in a position of, are we in a position to enhance benefits? And what can we do to enhance benefits for our members? One of the benefits that we have of a local union is we have our own fund, and it gives us the ability to try to, create different ideas for our members. And the first thing that I thought about when I took over was, can we explore it? It even started the idea prior to me taking over as president with the former leadership who was very open-minded to the idea of infertility coverage. And we started this exploring of, is it feasible to provide this benefit to our members? Most Taft-Hartley funds that, traditionally were excluded IVF benefit coverage, right? Our funds had excluded it my whole career. To my knowledge, again, that's hence why we had a lot of out-of-pocket expenses many years ago. And so we started to explore it. And frankly, it brought a lot of pride for me to be able to kind of take this and get it over, over the goalpost to provide this benefit to our members. Because like my wife talked about earlier, everybody that wants to have the opportunity to have a family should be afforded that opportunity. So it's something that I found, very rewarding for me to finally be able to provide this for our members.
As you may have guessed by now, UFCW Local 152 decided to add the Progyny benefit to support their members with infertility benefits.
Why we ended up with Progyny, we had saw Progyny's benefit. I started to do a little bit of research on it. I looked at their book of business. They have a large labor book of business. That they're in a lot of different unions throughout there. And we started to speak with the folks at Progyny. The folks that I met with from Progyny, when I would speak to them about how they felt about their benefit, they were very convicted that you guys provide a product that offers value to the participants. And when somebody's very convicted about how they feel about everything, that means a lot to me. Right. And they the thought process behind what I would hear from them is, we want to help and we want to see healthy babies being born. And we want to try to make a difference in people's lives. And that meant a lot to me. It just seemed like a good fit for us. When we look at their big labor book of business, and you start to look at that very union-friendly, labor-friendly company, which means a lot to me. If I could find a way to provide more providers that are really all union, type friendly environment, I would explore that. But Progyny just seemed like it would be a good fit for us to go down that road. And we kind of lasered our focus on trying to put together something that would work for our members.
It's still early days of this benefit for Local 152, so hopefully we can do a follow-up down the road when we have some exciting outcomes and stories to share. But harking back to his own experience, Danny was excited to share his thoughts on Progyny's Smart Cycle plan design and the impact of Progyny's PCAs, the Progyny care advocates who work with members to make sure everything moves smoothly and to provide an expert layer of care on top.
So what I can tell you of the Smart Cycle from a layman's terms is, and I can reflect this back onto our own experience. I wish that when we were going through our journey of infertility, I wish I had somebody that could help direct our focus, because I believe I look at it from a way different lens now as from then. And I think we spent a lot of unnecessary money and a lot of unnecessary time trying to just throw darts at the wall to try to do anything. And the idea of the smart cycle format to try to kind of better enhance good outcomes, as opposed to, in our scenario, we were literally caution at the wind. All right, let's try another IUI. Let's try to do this. Let's try to do that. Try to do that. The idea of us being able to cobble together enough money in order to be able to do, infertility coverage, I really believe we wasted a lot of time and money in chasing our tail. And the idea of having somebody like a Progyny who works with their smart cycle format to kind of hone in and to kind of put us in a position, whoever's going to need it, put them in a position where they can better utilize their benefits to have a better outcome, seems to make sense for me.
If you have the Progyny benefit and are curious how it works, or if you don't have it now but are interested in bringing it to your place of work, it's important for you to understand just a little bit about the Smart Cycle. The Smart Cycle covers a full episode of care. This means that not only can you do IVF when that's the treatment that you need, but you can also leverage all of today's best practice technology inside of that IVF cycle. So if the doctor says that you need to fertilize sperm using ICSI to overcome male factor infertility, you can simply move ahead with the understanding that it is covered. This is something that would have dramatically changed Elizabeth and Danny's personal journey.
Well, how we ended up getting pregnant, we had to do ICSI, because of Danny's male factor infertility as well, which is, part of the IVF process. We would have done the IVF because a lot of my issues is, bypassed with the IVF, and his issues. If we had coverage 100%, I mean, it literally, I hate to say it, but the reason that we did it was 100%. The way that we did it was all financial.
I think it's a no-brainer to say that if we would have had a benefit like this here,
100%.
we would have went right to this, right?
Yeah.
We would have utilized it because
Absolutely.
it would have put us in a position to have a better outcome. Look, there's, IVF is not a 100% perfect,
No.
outcome all the time, but
Right.
it is by far the best opportunity of getting the best outcome.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't want that opportunity if that's what they're really, seeking to do, is to have a family? Why wouldn't you want to have the best outcome?
Right. The best chance, that is your best chance at it, and if you have that opportunity and the not the financial burden that goes along with it.
I'm sure there's people that do IUIs and they get pregnant very easily with them, and they go, "Wow, that was awesome. That was easy." My gut is it's not the norm.
He's completely right there. Again, IUI does have its place, and I don't think anyone is out there arguing that everyone needs IVF first. But for those who do, when their doctor evaluates everything and realizes that IUI has almost no chance to work, then it becomes cost-effective to move right to IVF. Now, I could go on and on about the Progyny benefit and how it really is effective and efficient, but at the end of the day, Danny says it best, because it's not really about Progyny, it's about the members.
Anything in a union, right, is about what do we provide to our members, right? What's the value of being a union member, right? And look, a lot of, they get representation, right? They have people that care about them to negotiate a contract for them and their family. And one of the things that I've said consistently for years, when I look at contracts for our members, when I would draft contracts and I would negotiate contracts on behalf of my members, every time I would look at it like I was trying to do it for my own family. And to have a benefit like this, an enhancement that I know that would benefit my family, I know it can benefit my members. And so I think that a lot of our members stay in their facilities and stay employed at their facilities because we provide value to them. And so from some of our major employers that we have long-term members that have been around, they stay there. I don't know that they never necessarily stay there because they love their employer all the time. I think they stay there because there's benefits that are provided to them through their collective bargaining agreement. And one of them happens to be the benefits that we provide through our health and welfare fund. And so when I make those enhancements, and as a union, and it's not just me, but and our management trustees deserve recognition for partnering with the labor union side in making these benefit enhancements, that they saw the value of it to their employees, right? And we pitched it because when you're in a Taft-Hartley fund, the union just doesn't say what goes, right? We need to have partners on the other side, on the management side. And when we spoke to the management side trustees about the importance of this benefit, they partners with us and they saw the benefit for their employees. So if they see a benefit for their employees, we see a benefit for our members. I look at it as a win-win. And hopefully what will happen is those benefits that we continue to bargain on behalf of our members will continue to provide value to their employees. And then ultimately in the long run, they stay longer and they're happy with the benefits they have. And that's kind of our job here, is to try to make things better than what we found. And we'll continue to look at Local 152. We'll kind of continue to look at benefits, and anywhere we can make improvements to improve the benefits for our members and their families, that's what we're going to do. This was just the start.
Again, I really enjoyed my time with Danny and Elizabeth, so I want to give a big thank you to both of them for sharing with us today. It was Danny's idea to make sure that Elizabeth joined us for this conversation, and I just hope that we did their story justice. If you want to bring Progyny to your employer or to your labor union, we have resources for you at progyny.com/talktohr. You can be the person who makes a difference here, so please don't hesitate to reach out. I want to thank you for listening. If you want to connect with us, you can do so on Instagram at This Is Infertility Podcast. If you want to follow Progyny, you can do that at Progyny Inc. Of course, if you're listening to a podcast app, please leave a rating and review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. This Is Infertility is brought to you by Progyny. Please remember this podcast is not intended to substitute for the personalized expert advice of your physician. I'm Dan Bulger, and this is Infertility.